Greetings one and all to another Dark Rider pony analysis. I am the Nightmare Rider, Mage of Mind, reminding you as always that even a cheeseburger can be deconstructed to its original source. I am just going to say right now that Rarity Takes Manehatten is an amazing episode. Rarity episodes are quickly becoming synonymous with some of the best episodes in the show, including A Dog and Pony Show, Suited for Success, and Sweet and Elite. Dave Polsky is a writer for this episode, so while he can be hit and miss with his story, this is one where he definitely hits it out of the park. But this brings up an important question when it comes to critiques. How do you determine which critiques are more important than others? Obviously, we all have opinions and personal perspectives, but we all have at least some basic standard, otherwise we'll be downright hypocritical in letting some episodes get away with doing a particular narrative mistake compared to others. Speaking purely for myself, frequent viewers will know that I tend to place importance on evidencing a character's emotions and having a believable story backing this up, which is exactly what this episode does so well. The episode starts out with the main six going to Manehatten for Rarity's fashion show, which Rarity quickly demonstrates her appreciation for her friends coming with her by producing 6 tickets for the hit musical Hinny of the Hills, which apparently is very hard to get tickets for. I've harped on in my reviews so far about having all the main 6 in every episode makes it difficult to balance these characters properly while still having them be useful, but this episode has done it perfectly. Rainbow Dash particularly stands out with the lampshading of some common themes in previous episodes, as well as showing alongside Pinkie Pie that they are both sensitive to emotions when they need to be. All of the main 6 have a great purpose in this episode to support Rarity. Pinkie Pie seems to have gotten the short end of the characterization stick for season 4 thus far, but thankfully here she is still her hyperactive self without being flanderized ridiculously. While Tommy Oliver did point out how Spike seems to be getting a fair bit of abuse this episode in terms of being a slapstick side character, but I don't think it's too bad since he still has a great value to the plot other than being a simple punching bag. He is still getting rewarded for his efforts to carry Rarity's vast amount of luggage, not to mention he is the one who points out that Rarity has forgotten her dresses once she is sped off to avoid being late for her introduction. However, I do have to bring up another criticism that seems to be brought up by most analysts. Why isn't Twilight being treated like a princess when she is trying to get a cab from the big lime? Even if they haven't heard of her specifically, the fact that she is an alicorn should make a big difference as a whole. Through most of this season, she's not been acting very princess-like, which on some level I like because it retains the same connection she has with her friends before. But at the same time, I do feel that we need to validate the fact that she became a princess so soon, because otherwise it would have been completely redundant. I don't want it to be just a toy marketing gimmick. That being said, I can forgive it to a large extent during this episode, considering the number of conflicts that we already have. We have 3 primary conflicts, all of which lead back to developing Rarity through this episode, so adding another of Twilight trying to assert herself as a princess could have harmed this episode overall, potentially making it convoluted. Like Twilight ordering a special delivery by using her authority as a princess to get a proper escort, but considering how well the conflicts are presented in this episode, I think leaving it out was the safe option. Now it's time to really delve into why Rarity is so amazing in this episode. Her first song does an amazing job of showing every little piece of generosity towards the people of Manehatten as the positive responses she gets for this. The primary point of the story is to contrast those who respond in kind to Rarity's generosity. We need to get a sense of how big a city Manehatten is so that we can fully appreciate how far generosity works for Rarity, that she is riding a high of confidence that she can trust up this pattern to continue. I've heard this episode criticised for the plot contrivance of Rarity's dresses arriving so soon after her, as well as one pony during the song having a grumpy cat cutie mark. I call these nitpicks because they don't hurt the episode as a whole, since the pacing and story are still well focused enough, and the outcome of these small inconsistencies here and there can be overlooked for the critique as a whole. Check out the reviews of Double Rainboom by Mr. Enter and Josh Scorcher for details, but the key reason why Double Rainboom didn't work with so many references in there is because it was putting too much effort into the constant references and not enough into the cohesive story or the comedic timing. We get introduced to Suri Pullmare, an old acquaintance of Rarity from Ponyville that moved to Manehatten to make it big. I completely love how her character is portrayed. She is very enthusiastic about seeing Rarity again, but you don't initially suspect her as being manipulative. Subtlety is exactly what we get, as Suri only suggests that she borrows some of Rarity's cloth for accents to her own fashion line. Considering Rarity's lucky break when it comes to almost being late from her introduction with Prim Hemline, I think it's pretty justified that she's more than happy to be generous as to a competitor, since she still has her full design already created. While it isn't exactly shocking to see Suri turn round and, figuratively speaking, stab Rarity in the back given the nature of this plotline, I do think that it's handled really well, with Suri's lines being delivered with more sarcastic edge to it after that instant. The real gem in Suri's character is where she is shown to be very condescending and verbally abusive to her assistant, Coco Pommel. Right away, you can tell that Coco is in an abusive relationship with Suri, being very soft-spoken and eager to please, all the while being shouted down by her partner for simply talking. Each time she does this, you can see her face drop with guilt. She is clearly conflicted about everything, knowing that this is a bad thing while still going along with it to please her partner. This is all shown through minimal lines of dialogue and facial expressions, showing her emotions without needing to outright state them at the very beginning. Rarity is of course very melodramatic and upset by this. She has a reason to be, seeing as the defining part of her character has more than likely cost her a competition that she worked incredibly hard on. I had to mention Rainbow Dash again here, as it's a small moment that makes a world of difference when it comes to her character. She is the first one to notice that Rarity is upset and asks if she is okay. That alone should be reason enough for me to compare this episode to Hurricane Fluttershy levels of quality. All of the main six are then pushed to their emotional limits, staying up all night helping Rarity design new dresses from hotel material. As I stated before, a big reason why they were in Manehatten to begin with was to see Hinny of the Hills. Considering we have emphasised how difficult it is to get these tickets to begin with, it makes perfect sense that they would be conflicted from the hype. This causes Rarity to snap at them, shouting down at them for what she feels is another exploitation of her own generosity. Why wouldn't she? Her biggest moment has been undermined by the darker side of Manehatten, and she has one final hope of remotely winning the competition. This action isn't excused, but it is justified as to why she does so. We have seen everything build up to boiling point, and Rarity is simply snapping under the pressure. When she finally does deliver her dresses to the competition, she actually wins the whole thing. I really liked how her creativity got the judges interested, rather than having her mocked for her friends to be there to pick her back up. When she does notice the empty space where her friends would be, she realises who the most important people are to her and how the pressure has clouded her judgment. This is probably the final piece of big criticism in the episode, considering how quickly this conflict was resolved. But actually, it's not resolved at all. It evolves and leads to a bigger conflict that Rarity is feeling guilt for snapping at her friends. She sees it as a hollow victory since she didn't give credit where credit was due, leaving her to feel deflated since she has betrayed her own generosity and almost sunk down to the level of Suri, which given how she got upset the first time is a pretty big blow. When she finds out her friends have left the hotel, she decides to make amends and tell Prim Henline how much her friends helped her design the outfit. Suri then spins another lie about how Prim is furious and doesn't want to be seen, which is when the rest of the main six enter and settle their differences, explaining they missed Hilly of the Hills due to oversleeping. Rarity admits that she doesn't care about winning the competition anymore, simply saying how her friends are more important. This is where we get to one of the biggest morals of the entire show, one that rivals Hurricane Fluttershy in how amazing it is. Twilight says that they know Rarity, so one little argument isn't going to ruin their entire friendship. It's hard to state just how important this lesson is for children. No friendship is ever going to be perfect. There will be disagreements, tense moments, and sometimes even fights. But if your friends really know you, they will stick with you and resolve the differences because they really care about you. Rarity shows that she has gotten new tickets to Hinny of the Hills due to talking to the production designer again, offering to make her costumes for the entire show. This is another thing Princess Twilight could have done done through her authority, but this works much better because it sets up another amazing scene. After Rainbow Dash contains her love for the musical, Rarity says that she will have to be away from Ponyville for a while, which her friends accept since it's a big dream of hers. But then Coco Pamel bursts in, telling them all about how she was forced to help Suri because of her own generosity being exploited. But now she has cut off the partnership and escaped the abusive relationship. This allows the final exchange of generosity between Rarity and Coco. In exchange for a small present, Rarity gives the designer job for Hinny of the Hills to Coco. She now has a legitimate use for her generosity that is separate from her abusive relationship. She can make up for her misdeeds, which is another important lesson for children. It's one thing to accept your mistakes, but the most important part is to learn from them and move on to make yourself a better person, which is exactly what Coco did. The final moral with Rarity writing in the journal back in Ponyville, where she unpacks the present to see a rainbow thread, which the episode ends on showing the thread glowing. Considering that we saw earlier in this episode while Rarity stared at the empty space where her friends were, this has to have some significance for future episodes. I cannot say what since it's not explained in the episode. It could just be another ending gag or a red herring, but until we get more potential answers, I can't really add that as an overall criticism. Now at last it's time for my final thoughts. This episode was simply amazing. Near perfect character development, intelligent written conflict that makes the episode interesting despite it being based on the typical formula, and some heartwarming morals developed as a result of a believable everyday antagonist. So does this episode get a perfect S rating? A rating I've so far only applied to Hurricane Fluttershy? Honestly, as much as I want to, I can't. I understand why they didn't include references to Twilight's status as a princess, but they still really need to start adding it in, as it didn't make much sense for the Manehatten locals to ignore the fact that Twilight is an alicorn. Still, while it's just shy of an S rating, I can wholeheartedly rate this episode as an A+. A superb effort by Dave Polsky, and I really hope this trend of good writing continues for the rest of the season. Until next time, this is the Nightmare Rider, Mage of Mind, riding out.